Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey. My guest today is J. Nicholas Gross, otherwise known as Nick. Hello, Jay. Hello, Nick. How are you doing? I can't call you Jay.
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So for those who don't know Nick, this is actually the first time we've met, like sort of face to face. But we're old Twitter pals. So we're always going back and forth. Sometimes we argue with each other, but mostly we talk about crypto, and we're just sort of trying to understand things that we're seeing, more or less in real time as they happen as quickly as we can, and before everybody else does, so we can buy stuff that's good and not buy stuff that's bad. So, okay, I'm just going to read a little blurb here, and this was actually prepared by AI, fittingly enough. We're going to dive into the launch of dTAO, which is a groundbreaking evolution of the Bittensor network, which launched on February 13th. dTAO, or Decentralized TAO, introduces a new market-driven system whereby each subnet in Bittensor's decentralized AI ecosystem issues its own tradable token, allowing users to stake TAO and receive subnet-specific alpha tokens in return. So the dTAO and alpha tokens are the same thing. This upgrade represents a shift in power from a small group of root validators to a broader, transparent market, aiming to enhance decentralization and align incentives across the Bittensor network. All right. So Nick and I, we watched this thing launch. So first of all, just general impressions. What did you think of the launch? Did you think it was a success? Do you think what's your sort of gut on it so far?
Well, I anticipated it for a long time. I had my eye towards the press releases to see when it was going to happen. I wasn't really that focused on the day that it happened, but people kept talking about it. I thought, okay, I should at least check it out. And so I played with it a little bit. I didn't really dip my toe until like the second day. But overall, I thought people were responding very well to it and liked it. And I thought it was pretty cool too. But I just had difficulty participating quickly as well, as a lot of people did. My wallet seemed to be frozen in time. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to fix this kind of thing? And I thought, well, maybe the universe is talking to me that I should wait a little while.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it was very confusing. It was a confusing launch. Yeah. If you were sort of like in the inner sanctum of the Bittensor universe, where all the nerds like talk to one another and spent their lives on Bittensor stuff, you probably understood what was going on a lot better. Right. We're sort of, one layer removed from those people, right?
Right. Well, although I guess you do participate in the Discord channel, though, right? Because I go to Telegram as well, but I don't go to Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, Discord is the one. It seems to be the preferred place for most of the sort of deeper people,
right?
Where Telegram is for that's for the rubes. So maybe the nerds like Discord. I don't know why. I don't like Discord. I hate the stupid thing. It like updates itself for 5 hours every time I click on it.
I hate both of them, but so many projects have one or the other, and oftentimes you can't figure out what's going on until you go into one of those channels and someone tells you, hey, idiot, they did this yesterday. You're going, okay, well, I wasn't included in, right? Because I pretty much participate only on X. And if it's not on X, it's almost invisible to me in terms of stuff like that.
That's kind of how I am for the most part as well. So when you say your wallet was frozen, I think what you're saying is that, in the old world before this dTAO upgrade, you could stake your TAO tokens in the TAO wallet with a validator, and you didn't have to do anything. You just sort of like delegated it to them, and you would earn somewhere between 16 and 18% APY.
Yes,
like for the last year or so, which is pretty good, right? Not doing anything, right?
No, I mean, especially for a project that I liked, I thought the number was very good.
Yeah, and I agree.
Based upon the people that you had on your show, for example, people like Keith Singery, I think his name is.
Yes.
I liked him. I thought, again, this is definitely a good project. And so I used the Chrome browser extension version of the wallet that's available on the Mac.
Yeah.
And that's how I got the wallet, and that's how I was feeding it tokens, and that's how I got staked with Keith so far. Right. But then on the day of the launch, the Chrome browser extension wallet was just sitting there spinning its wheels. And I thought, okay, what do I do?
I had the same experience. So you couldn't unstake your stake TAO in order to then turn around and spend the TAO on the subnet tokens, right? So it's kind of like, this is very much like the ICO phase in a lot of ways, sort of happening all at once on the TAO network, where you need the base token in order to buy all the other tokens, right? And if you can't get to them, you can't participate, right? So go ahead.
I ended up doing a quasi kludge on that. I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to go see because I had a small balance that was not staked. And I noticed when I went to the TAO stat site, it could see that balance.
Yes.
So I said, okay, I got to get more TAO. So I went and bought some on an exchange.
Oh, you bought some? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's how curious I was. I'm going to go buy some more, right? As difficult as it is, as you probably know.
Not easy.
A lot of the exchanges don't carry it anymore, or don't carry it.
Well, Coinbase just announced today that they're going to carry it.
Exactly.
That's amazing, right?
A whole other universe.
Yeah,
exactly. But I had to go to KuCoin, where I have a VPN to get to KuCoin, because KuCoin doesn't like you otherwise, right? And so I managed to buy more, and then I said, "Oh, now I can play with this and see what happens." So that's what I did. I actually bought more just to play with it, and that's when it kind of got me hooked. And then I don't know if you know, but Yuma has an app, and the Yuma app did allow me to play with my
Sorry, Yuma, is that the Yuma group that the Barry Silbert runs?
It may very well be. I didn't really pay much attention to the affiliation. And just for the record, I'm not affiliated with any of these people. I'm not affiliated with TAO. We should state it up front, right? Full disclosure. I don't know anybody. I don't have any particular knowledge. But Yuma, it's something app, Yuma.app, whatever. It behaved better in terms of being able to do basic things, even with a wallet. So I ended up using that for some of the unstaking part of it. And then once I could unstake, then I could play with it. Then I had free, cash available to do stuff with.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me bring up the. Here we go. This is the TAOstats.io site, and this is where you can see all the subnets. Right. So this is sort of the coin market cap, if you will, of this universe. Right. So now I've got it set to USD here. So root is sort of that's the root of the system. And that's worth, $2.65 billion. So that's where the bulk of the TAO is just, staked there. And I've heard varying reports on how much. Is it 90? I think it's 90%. Some people have challenged me on that, but I've seen some numbers that suggest it is 90%. And 10% of the TAO has now been staked and exchanged for these dTAO tokens. And so shoots right here. And I don't like how it turns to shin. That's really weird. But
it's showing you the name of the symbol, I guess. Yeah,
I know what it's doing, but it's confusing. I'm like, why is it shin now, right? So
I know.
it's just shit like this drives me nuts with the Bittensor people. Yeah. So it's getting 11.91% of the emissions, so pretty high. And now, why is that? Well, because the market cap is the highest other than Root. So this particular subnet sitting at 9.7 million. Yeah. Yes. So far, okay.
Yeah.
And it's it's got 9.2 million in volume, so pretty healthy. It's a little under a week in, so pretty good. And as you sort of go down the list here, the next biggest one is 7 million roughly, 4.4 million, 4.2, blah blah blah, and then it sort of goes to a million. Yeah. And then then you get down into like the hundreds of thousands, right? So
three quarters of them are below a million. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is nothing like virtuals, right? Like virtuals, that's sort of, in my mind, that's sort of the comparable in terms of UI anyway, not in terms of what's going on under the hood. Yeah. But virtuals, like a lot of those tokens are in the hundreds of millions, kind of right out of the gate, right? Now, those are just meme coins with mouths. They're meme, right? They're just Twitter accounts. They're just AI, running Twitter accounts basically, or X accounts. And, whereas these are very, the Bittensor projects tend to be very brainiac, deep things that are sort of hard and esoteric to understand at first. Right. So, so do you have any thoughts on this front page here before I sort of dive into one of them?
Well, I like that. I mean, I thought they did a very good job on this front page, and it behaves pretty well if you play with it and try to sort things and do things with it. The one thing I should point out is that there was a lot of talk today about the reason why it was having some kind of a setback or was having some consolidations, because the market cap of these 64 separate little, I call them enterprise zones. The 64 enterprise zones within the ecosystem.
The subnets.
Yeah, yep. are bigger than the value of the whole thing. But the number you're looking at there, that's not the fully diluted value. That's just simply the circulating value. So the circulating value of the tokens, right, is what the number is there. Because that,
yes.
So I think if you look at supposedly, the full diluted value would be, billions for the whole aggregate, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. So this little 9.7 million number here, for shoots, that's just the valuation of the subnet tokens that are in circulation. And, so is that really the valuation of shoots? Well, probably not. It's probably quite a bit more. I don't know how much more, but I don't know if it's billions, but it's definitely more than, 10 million or so. So it doesn't really reflect, I guess, the fair value. I mean, they probably hold more TAO than $10 million where, right. They probably have, 40 million or something like that, I would guess.
I have it. Yeah. If you pick up one of the pages, like the shoots, whatever you're going to look at, it does show you how much TAO is in the treasury
it does. I did not know that. Okay. Let's go have a look at shoots.
On one of the little things there. Yeah.
All right. So this is, when you drill down in, this is like your basic coin page, just like on CoinMarketCap, you can see, and actually before we dive, the price action is pretty. Oh. So actually, let's talk about like some people might not know sort of what happens. So, just overall. So when dTAO launched, for like a day or two, nothing happened because nobody could get their TAO, as we described earlier, right? It was kind of frozen. Mm-hmm. And then it freed up. And so a lot of the charts look horrible. It just looked like a crashing meme coin, like all the subnets, all the dTAO tokens, right? And they all had super low valuations. Like they're all sub 1 million pretty much, right? For a couple of days. Yeah. And then yesterday and into late last night, people started buying dTAO tokens en masse, and the valuations screamed up. Now, not crazily, right? Because they were still like, maybe 12 million was the highest I saw, right? But you and I, and so if you bought into subnets, you were making insane amounts of TAO. I was making hundreds of TAO personally, right? So
I was somewhat lucky in that I got in that window of time after the first people who clearly were in the know and bought right away. Yeah. And then the later people, like last night, I kind of got in between when it had already come down. It was coming up a little bit more. It's starting to look like it was going to come to life again, right? So I didn't get the absolute bottom, but I got nowhere near the top either. So that was fortuitous, because if I'd bought like 6 hours later, I'd probably be in the red now. But anyway, right? You can see how it's behaving now. It had a setback earlier today. It is doing this kind of bounce down. It bounced up a little bit, looked like it's going to come back and bounce down again. So now I'm kind of waiting and seeing now to see what's going to happen here with this chart. Yeah.
Yeah, today was like the inverse of yesterday and last night. Everything crashed, basically. Yeah. Not down below where it started, but definitely, from its highs. But I don't think the highs have been too crazy, right? Like I don't look at this as an insane market. Percentage-wise, insane maybe in terms of the amount it went up and came down, but not raw value-wise. So,
no, I mean, we're still talking about numbers, as you said, for these market caps for these subnets below $10 million. I mean, if you go to any kind of other investment, alternative investment tool like AngelList, for example, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to AngelList and asking for something less than $10 million. Usually just 10 to 20 is a starting point, is a seed company. And most of the seed companies you see that I get pitched anyway are nowhere near as advanced or competent as a lot of the teams on here. So, I feel just in terms of value wise, these little enterprise zones, like I call them, I think that they're better than the typical VC offering that I see anyway. I get like 3 of them a day.
That's a super interesting observation.
Yeah, and I get them all the time. And the funny thing is that now that I get them, now that I know crypto, and I get some of these offerings from the VCs about crypto, I have a much better understanding of whether it makes any sense or not. Right? I can look at it and say, "Oh, that's kind of interesting," or I could say, "That's total horseshit. Somebody already does that better." Right? I mean, so. How are these people getting money kind of thing, right? So, but yeah, just in general, the number that I see usually in terms of the initial kind of seed stuff is usually more than $10 million. And most of them, I said, aren't as good as half the projects probably right now that are already living on Bittensor.
That is a super interesting observation. So the professional VC funded, Silicon Valley startups appearing on Angel List are not nearly as good as the subnet, the subnets, AI subnets that are popping up on Bittensor. Maybe half of them. I'd say some of them are not good, but most of them are pretty good. That's been my experience as well. I've interviewed a lot of these people on hash rate. I'm closing in on like 20 hash rates that have been about Bittensor so far. Right?
I've seen it. I love it when you have those guys on there, and I've seen a lot of key stuff as well. And that's part of the reason why I bought into this project, is because most of the guys you see talking, they're tech people, not business people. And that's what I like about Bittensor specifically. Is just mostly, I get a nerd project. Right? It's a nerd project that just happens to be good, and therefore it's attracting money, as opposed to starting off with looking for money and then trying to figure out how to use it. Right.
Yeah. No, so let's look at shoots for a second. So I think what's sort of, the flip side of that is that a lot of this stuff, because it's high quality, it's complex, and it's not easily understandable by the mob, right? Whereas a dog with a hat, like anybody understands that. A meme coin with a mouth, right? Like the thing that was cool about virtuals is it was pretty much just a standard issue Uniswap like AMM with a coin market cap like interface. It was very simple. Like there's a lot of complexity we're about to see here in the Bittensor universe. That's very much like a centralized exchange with an order book and and like all kinds of crazy charts and things. Whereas the virtuals universe was very dopey, and so I think that makes it that means the coins can go up. It's very accessible to people, so the coins can go up a lot really fast. Whereas this universe, it's very difficult to understand. So it's even though it's better.
Closed. Yeah, it's kind of closed. Yeah, no, I agree. There's not a lot of, forward-looking material for retail to look at it, see like what's going on under the hood. There's very little public presentation. There's very little public presence and visibility about who's doing what and how, because they don't have a lot of advanced, visible tools for the public to see.
Yeah.
And then when they do, it's kind of dense to read. Right.
Yes.
What are you doing? Right?
I'm trying to demystify it as fast as I can with hash rate, but don't always get to everybody, right? So
no, it is really dense. And so, there's a small universe of people who've been able to kind of have some kind of public front or kiosk to show you what they're doing. But then there's this other universe of people they look like they're developing tools for other people in the ecosystem. So you're going like, what are they doing? They're making plumbing for other people. Well, what do the people need plumbing for? Right? You have so little understanding of the ecosystem to understand, like, why is this participant in here? What are they doing? Right? And so I think that's the biggest challenge, understanding this project, this bigger project, is there's so many aspects to this new technology that very few people understand in the first place, let alone some of the subtleties, like I said, of, my subnet scours data to provide it to the feeds for the other subnets, and you're going, right. All right, okay, where am I going with this? What is that worth? What does it mean? Right? So you're kind of scratching your head about.
Well, okay. So what is Shoots? Do you know what this one is? It says serverless Shoots AI compute.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
See, no, actually, I do not. But I know that just based upon public chatter, like 64, Subnet 64, there's a couple of them that have a lot of chatter and a lot of buzz, if you will. 64 is one of them, as is 4 and 19. Now, 64, I got to be honest, I haven't even read a lot about it, but I just know that the people who are in the space seem to like it, and therefore I tend to defer to people who I think are smarter than me in that space to say, yes, it's good, because I can't figure it out, right? And it seems to be something that they do like. And so, that's part of the reason why it's getting a lot of oxygen right now, I think, from the program. It's probably one of the purer, AI-based projects.
Yeah, it looks like it's an AI cloud. Like, I'm just going to guess here and say that's what it is.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
It's basically with it's AWS, but it's specifically geared for AI, and so not AWS in a lot of ways, but same kind of idea. So its market cap, as we said earlier, is about 10 million, right?
Yeah.
There's, let's see, how many tokens are, so circulating supply, 74.79 thousand tokens. There's a maximum supply of 21 million, but these the supply is like, this is always going up. So the circulating supply is emitted by the Bittensor network, and we'll get into that in a second. It used to just emit TAO tokens, but now it's emitting also, I believe, these alpha tokens or dTAO tokens,
right, into the subnet. Yeah, exactly.
Into the subnet, right? So if we go down here,
you saw the thing above that shows you how much TAO is in the pool. You were asking about that earlier. If you go back up there,
yes,
TAO in pool. There's 6.87K in there. There's 3 million worth of TAO, and there's about 10.5 million worth of alpha, and it gives you the ratio then of the tokens in the pool there.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, because that's very different from like Uniswap, right? Where Uniswap will attempt to keep things in a 50-50, keep the force balanced at all times.
Right.
This apparently will not.
Right, and this doesn't seem to care, and I'm not sure that it makes a difference in terms of the what's the word for it? In terms of the optimization or the utility of the AMM, because the source of the tokens isn't even from other depositors. The source of the tokens is the network, which is just shoving stuff into this pool, right?
Yep.
And it's in the form of this alpha tokens. It's only the case when people buy things that TAO comes in as far, or maybe the root also puts in TAO as well. But there's some kind of mix, and the bulk of it though is the alpha tokens. So I thought too that eventually that number should get to be bigger. And I will tell you, one of the cool things I like to do, looking at random stuff, is I've looked at all the subnetworks, and this one by far has the most TAO percentage. Most of them have less than 3 or 4%. And so this one is enjoying the benefit of the lion's share of attention right now. And you can tell that by how much TAO ratio there is in their pool.
Because basically when people buy the alpha token, they buy it in TAO. So now the pool gets the TAO that was used to buy it. So if there's a lot of TAO in the pool, that means a lot of people have bought, right?
That's right. And you can see that percentage, like I said, it's pretty small for most other ones. Some of them have less than 1%. And so you're thinking,
there's a lot of them that have less than 1%. So it's very much like, it's sort of like Curve, more so than it is like Uniswap, in that out of balance pools are totally fine with how it works okay.
That's an interesting comparison, because I didn't remember. I haven't played with Curve in a long time. I remember you were a big fan of it, and I remember you gave a lot of expositions of how it worked. But I mean, this is a weird kind of a model, because there's no other thing like it where the pool is ostensibly supposed to be a swapping pool, but then the source of the tokens isn't all from the swappers. There's some other funnel that's just shoving tokens in on a regular basis to increase the size of the thing based upon some formula, as you say.
Which I don't totally understand. I confess. So let me just get to the heart of the matter here, because this is the name of the game. Why are we screwing around with subnet tokens? Well, really two reasons. One is obviously we're hoping we buy them and they go up in value like normal tokens, right? So you use your ETH to buy ICO tokens because you think it'll go up more than ETH, right?
Yeah.
So, and sometimes they did spectacularly, but most of the times they didn't, right? So which is probably what's going to happen here. But the other thing that happens in the Bittensor network is you have emissions. So the actual, every time, just like in, the Bitcoin network, or even Ethereum, I guess not Ethereum now because it's deflationary, but in Bitcoin, with every block that's mined, new Bitcoin is produced and given out as a reward to miners, right? So you have the same concept here. You have emissions coming out of the network every day. And, so this particular subnetwork is now getting roughly 12% of the emissions that are coming out, that are just, new TAO tokens that are made every day. How much? Well, 857 new tokens, right?
Yeah.
And they're split up between the validators, the miners, and the owner of the subnet. Now, what I don't know is, and this we were sort of talking about this last night, right?
Yes.
So where do our emissions come from, right? Because we have to be in this pile somewhere, and I'm not sure where we are, but I think we're in the validator section because we're not producing AI. That's what the miners are doing. Yeah. So we're getting a share of the validators, and I think you had an insight on that last night. I think you actually figured out the number.
I ended up going over to the dTAO pages of the Bittensor site, and I found some explanations of what the root emission is in terms of what happens at any moment in time. There's some TAO, there's some alpha token, some of it goes here, some of it goes there. but I'm pretty sure, even though it isn't really super well broken out, I'm pretty sure that we get the validator portion. We share that with the validator. And I think the validators can take a piece, can opt not to take a piece of that. Okay. So if you nominate a validator like Keith, for example, to be in this, to be your delegate in this subnet.
Wait, so let me just make sure people are following this. So you would take your alpha tokens, not your tau, but you'd buy the alpha tokens or the dTAO tokens. You would stake them in the network, and you have to stake them with a validator.
That's right.
And you and I like Keith, so we usually stake with Keith. But there are other validators you can stake with, just so everyone's on the same page. Go ahead.
And for the record, when you try to stake, I think another subnet comes up. Another validator comes up by default. I wasn't aware of that until you did like 4 or 5, and I thought, wait a second. What am I doing?
The guys who made the TAOstat site run a validator, right? So they're like, use our stuff, right? Of course
your stuff is first.
I have no problem with that. They made the front end. Why not?
Right. So as far as I understand it, we share that portion of the pie with the validators. Now, in terms of how much, that's harder to parse out, but they gave a pretty funky formula, and it looks like the validator only gets like 18%, and we get the rest of it. So whatever the portion is the validator, they only take 18% of whatever's coming our way, and some of them can actually opt not to take anything. And I'm saying I think that's what Keith is doing. So if we there's another tab somewhere on this site, I can't find it now. There's another tab where it tells you what each which each validator will take from the emissions. And Keith has set his to 0.
Well, why would Keith do that? I mean, he's not working for charity, obviously. So what is Keith up to? I don't know the answer either.
Yeah, it seems to be there's like this all or nothing approach. There's 0.
Yeah.
There's 0. There's 9. There's 18. So some people are taking like the full complement, and I thought I got to test this out. So I intentionally bought the same subtoken from 2 different people just to see. I bought them at the same exact time. So I'm going to see. I'm going to have to psych this one out, right? So I'm kind of a tinkerer that way. So I'm going to see if I'm going to psych this out. I'll let you know tomorrow what I.
Oh, okay. That's why I like you and why you're on this show, because I know you dig in all these little weird corners, and eventually, I will eventually get to the same question that you're already digging around in half the time. Right. And so you pop up, and I'm like, oh, dude, and he's like, oh yeah, I've got like 5 experiments running. I've got this. Like you did that with. Figuring out we were trying to figure out which subnets were the best ones to go into, and you had done a whole spreadsheet on the pluses and minuses of each one. Yeah. So well done. It was very useful. So thank you.
These pages are very rich with information, and if you go up above a little bit higher up, like where they keep going. So like where it says to the right, I think is where it says validators actually. Up above the chart there. Okay. Maybe I thought it was right there. So it's not chart. It's not metagraph.
Yeah, I haven't really dug around into this stuff yet.
Maybe Emission is a funky chart. That's not very helpful. But try metagraph.
Metagraph.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here you go. So if you go down here, you go down below, and you go over to the far right. There's a little thing which tells you. I believe.
Oh my God! It's like a space shuttle cockpit. This thing,
right. Okay, it's not on there, but I mean, there is a subfield somewhere in this mess of data, which tells you like how much each validator is taking, and it's not intuitive, right?
Yeah.
There you go. There's this thing called validators. See that up there above that. Actually, I realized I didn't see it. Okay.
Right here.
Yeah. We'll do this offline because it's not immediately apparent.
Sorry, kids. I don't think we're going to get a good demo on this particular part of it. But let me just go. I just want to finish the point over here with the subnet data. Yeah. So if you actually look at the percentages of how much these emissions break out to, so each one of these is 41% of the emissions. So the miners get 41%, validators get 41%, and you're saying of the 41%. 18% of that 41%, not like 41 minus 18, but 18% of 41% is what the validators can take from us. Right. They don't always, but that's what they can take.
That's my interpretation of what I'm reading. Now, maybe someone else has got better insight than that, But I will tell you, even with that insight, I still can't make the math work right. Like I intentionally, like you said, I set up an experiment to say, I have X tokens, there's X tokens in the pool, I should be seeing this amount of emissions, right? And I've played it out and tried to make it work to see, am I getting the correct number of tokens, right? Based upon my percentage ownership of the alpha pool, right? And it's never come out. I'm always short by gigantic amount. And so I'm thinking, you know, I'm missing something, right? There's some other fudge factor going on overlaid on all this, which I just don't understand, right? And someone else probably does and could tell us. But it's been a mystery, and you know, so far it's been a positive mystery because it seems to be better than what I thought should happen. But at the same time, it still leaves me kind of like, okay, you know, why is it the case that I'm getting way more than I thought I was, right, or supposed to? Because I actually projected it out and checked, and there's nowhere close.
I did the same thing. And I couldn't figure it out either. And like you, at least last night, like yesterday afternoon into, 3 a.m. kind of last night, I was getting way more in TAO. You know, I some combination of emissions and appreciation of subnet tokens. It was way bigger than I thought I was going to get. Right. So, but I couldn't figure out what was coming from where. Right.
Yes.
Like it's sort of murky. Right. And the converse is also true. As things are falling, you know, I'm losing. I'm watching my pile shrink down, right, in terms of its valuation in TAO. Right. But part of that is because the price of TAO went up today, weirdly, right? And I'm in subnet tokens, not TAO as much as I was, right? So I've taken like a third of my stack and put it into subnet token, just for so everyone knows.
That's kind of that's consistent with what I first I was like, I'm going to dip my toe in the water, see how hot the water is.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do this, right? So I started playing with it. I said, okay, well, and I kind of escalated a little bit. And I got ahead of myself. I got to the point where, like you, I was like a third in, and I was so tempted to do more this morning. I thought, no, I'm just going to let it sit for a little bit. Right.
Yeah, that was a smart move because we don't know when it's going to turn, right?
Yeah.
I feel like my experience with all of crypto is bold moves early with partial information are most, if it's a legitimate thing, are mostly good, right? So there was a moment where I had a big pile of Bitcoin and I interviewed Vitalik Buterin on a previous podcast, and he was. Yeah, I was in the ETH ICO, which I don't know if you knew that, but and I didn't put a lot in. I just didn't have a lot of money in those days, so I did have some Bitcoin.
We were all poor.
And it was very much like, do I want to give up my very precious Bitcoin, which I knew was going to be worth a lot someday, for this this new thing, Ethereum, which it hadn't launched yet. It was going to launch in a year. It sounded kind of sketchy, right? And so. But putting as much into Ethereum as you could was in fact the correct move, right? So you don't want to gamble your whole stack, but you definitely want to make some bold moves when you find these things.
No, you're absolutely correct, and you're one of those people who's willing to take to assess things and say, you know what, I don't know for sure, but I think I have a good intuition. I think I can assess things, and the risk reward here is very good. So I'm definitely going to put my stake in. I'm not going to sell the house, but I am going to put in a decent stake. And that's kind of the way I feel about this, which was I had a similar feeling to you, which was I got a decent amount of TAO. I don't want to put half of it in and then find out, geez, that was a mistake. It went right down the drain, right? So I was very cautious at first, but I was getting more confidence as I was doing it. And now, I kind of let it run. I'm going to kind of let it behave, do what it wants to do. And my next order of business, after this conversation is going to be, I'm going to go back and see like who's seemingly coming back to life, right? Because I've learned from some good TA people actually. Like I know you're tempted when it's starting to go down to think, I'm going to buy it right now. Is that you never hit the bottom, right? Always buy it on the way back up. Always buy it when it looks like it's got a heartbeat. Now it's going to make it, right? The paddles worked, right? not it went through the floor and it's not coming back again. Right, thinking, I found it. No, I didn't. Right, there's still a seller now. Right, so went through the floor. So I feel like I have learned a little bit from the TA people in this field. Again, crypto is so rich with smart people, and the TA in crypto is so much different than any other field. And they're really good at trying to beat out of you this idea of like, I know you want to get in, but trust me, just wait until conditions are right, and you'll be better off. And that idea of holding back until starting to actually see a heartbeat is one that's really hard one to be disciplined to do. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm like, okay, what have I got? I'll DCA back into a few of them.
Yeah, I operate a little bit differently. I try to like analyze like what's going on. I try to use my head, right? So like, I'm a big Sonic guy, right? And I was a big Phantom guy before, right?
Andre,
yeah. Yeah, and it was and I aped in pretty hard into Phantom because I knew Sonic was coming and I believed in Andre and the tech, and I'd really studied it from because I have an engineering background. And I was like, this is awesome, and it's better than everything else, right? Kind of. Right. And now, just today, just over the last few days, finally Sonic is, starting its trend back up. So it's got a heartbeat now, but I get in before the heartbeat because I looked at it earlier. So
I remember,
maybe that's a good idea, maybe not.
But I remember early on, some of our earliest discussions about crypto were about Phantom.
Yes.
And were about the consensus mechanism. That's really kind of how I got into crypto because I'm more of a freelancer now. I don't really have a significant legal practice, but I freelance for IP brokers who are people who get assets from inventors and companies. And those companies will say, are these assets any good? And I kind of take a look at them and I say, yes, it is, or no, it's not. It's not, the patent's bad, it's good. And so I started getting patents in the blockchain space. And that's actually how I started getting into crypto, was because I was doing all this work naturally already. And by extension of that, I started thinking, well, wait a second, what is this all about? So I started reaching out to people like you, and I got really kind of hooked on it. And so the more I read about these projects, and Phantom in particular, I was just really fascinated with the technology because, like you, I have an engineering background. And so it's just super fascinating to see what goes on under the hood and the math and the logic of how the graph gets built, how the blockchain gets built. It's just amazing stuff.
Yeah. So okay. So you invested in some subnet tokens. Are you still in those subnet tokens? What is your sort of gut say the next move here is? I can go first if you want. I feel like this is the up, down, and then usually the big up is the next one. So you don't want to jump out like when it goes down, right? Like that's the dumbest thing you can do.
I will tell you that after this afternoon, I thought to myself, dang, I should have taken off my stake first.
Yes, that was the right move. I had the same thought, but like you don't know, right? Like
I was up by some gigantic amount. And I thought, you're so stupid. I mean, have you learned nothing in this space, right? And so I kind of suffered through it. But like I said, now I'm kind of licking my wounds and saying, okay, here's the thing. There's still some great projects in there. I'm going to pick the ones where, again, like I said, they look like they face planted a little bit, but they still have a lot of other support from other people in the ecosystem. And therefore, again, they're starting to come back again. And those are the ones that I'm going to DCA back into those because I'm not going to get rid of the stakes that I have in the other kind of outlines. But the ones that I liked that got crushed also, the ones that start to show a heartbeat, I'm going to put more into those and kind of DCA into those. So again, it's been more of the popular ones. It's been like 64, 4, which is Targon. I like some of the funky, the Bittensor and Sports Tensor ones. Those are getting a lot of traction as well. And they haven't really been tortured quite as much as some of the other ones, right? And I like the ones dealing with real-time data, which is 42, I think. And so, I have my own pet favorites just because if it deals with an area of technology that I know better than the rest of them, I'm kind of like, I kind of know that thing, right? I can kind of see what they're doing. It looks like it has value. Therefore, I feel more comfortable doing it. And so that's kind of what is like the new money will probably go into the things that I think don't look like they've been damaged and look like they're going to get attention again, right? So that's kind of the first level cut.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable buying anything that was sort of in the couple $100,000 range for the reasons you cite. Like you don't know whether it's going to take off or die, and it's sort of in that weird twilight zone. So I bought the Old Faithfuls, right? I bought Targon. So that's the number 2. I didn't buy any shoots. Weirdly, I forget why, but Targon looked better to me. It was a better price to emissions ratio or something like that. Right. So I went into that. Dippy I've had on the show. So Dippy I forget what the conversation, not speech,
conversational agent.
Yeah. So like the conversational agents that they've been on the show, and I really liked what they do, and they've got like a ton of users. Like they've actually got product market fit for their AI products, consumer AI products on iPhones, and they're using Bittensor AI to sort of power all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is a good one for sure. And it's only like $1 million, dTAO valuation. Yeah. So I'm like, this is like a steal. So I bought a bunch of that. And I feel like the ones I'm in, like they're going to come back. So I'm not worried.
In fact, your explanation about Dippy, I went and saw the interview. It kind of motivated me to research it further, and I did more in there as well. So that I think that's an interesting project. Like you said, it's one of the few projects that's done enough, public facing stuff that people can know, hey, they're making a real product. Here's how it's used, and you can kind of see better, where it fits in. The other one I was going to tell you that I liked is the one, I can't remember what it's called, something AI Mind or something Mind. Anyway, it's the one that does deep fake detection.
Yes, we had them on the show too. Yes.
Okay.
Is it AI?
I didn't see that episode, but I will tell you, in my field of IP, there's a huge amount of interest in deep fake detection because a bunch of celebrities and other people are really upset about the fact that their likeness is being, used and abused all over the internet. And so I believe in my heart that pretty soon you're going to have these kinds of tools running for these people with money, right? That says, you know what, we're just going to scour the internet. We're going to use this tool, right? That I can do an API call to on Bittensor. It's going to say, yeah, that's a fake video of you. It's a fake photo of you, right? And so I think that that's got great promise, and not just for celebrities, but for the average person that doesn't want to be, taken advantage of.
Yeah, it's called Bitmind, by the way, and it is currently the number 3 most popular dTAO token. It's Subnet 34. Right now, the market cap is 4.4 million. So I mean, it's like startup. That's like seed startup valuation, right? Like it's almost insulting. It's so low, right?
That's like Shark Tank valuation.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's crazy, right? So. And these are and like something on virtuals, I don't want to knock them because I don't think there's anything wrong with, meme coins with a mouth. But, it's something that, if basically get AIXBT worth almost $1 billion, that makes 0 sense versus something like this, which is incredibly valuable, at 4 million, right? It just it doesn't have a Twitter account. So nobody knows about it, which is dopey.
Yeah. So I agree. So I kind of look at that as my equation because, like I said, I'm learning more to look at the chart before I buy. but I do though have kind of a shopping list with a similar metric that you were talking about, and it's funny because you were talking before about where does the emissions formula come from? Well, I don't know if I have this correct, but as I understood it before, the validators controlled all the emissions. They got to pick who got what. And they would fill out a weight chart every single, I don't know what the time was, but they would do it themselves. And so they kind of defined who got what. And now what's happening is
when you say who got what, are you talking about the people who stake with them, or are you talking about the network in general?
The subnet emissions, whatever the subnet was going to get for emissions was controlled by the validators. Okay. And so now what's happened though is that's been taken out of their hands. It's purely market driven now. You and I are deciding what the emissions are going to be by virtue of what we buy. And that's why those numbers are changing every day on that really cool table you were looking at before. And you can see it started off originally, Suits had probably 14 to 15%. Now it's down to 10 to 11 because Targa and other people have caught up to them. And so,
I just want to clarify, caught up to them because the price of those subnet tokens went up.
Yeah, the market cap,
So basically market cap determines percentage of emissions. Bottom line.
Right.
I just want to make sure that's clear. Like there's a lot here that's like sort of murky. So I want to, for the people who are, who are having trouble following it all, like even we are sometimes. So,
right. So what I did, the other thing I like to do is I like to go to the same page as you. And I say, okay, show me the emissions ordering. Right. And then I look at the market cap and I say, okay, well, wait a second. Here's a guy way in this list of entries, and their market cap is like half of the next guy, right? But they're getting 3% of the emissions. So if their market cap is half of the other guy, that means that half as many people are getting that same amount of tau, which means they're all getting a little bit more. And so I started using that also as kind of my metric for
it's a bargain. It costs less to get a bigger slice of the pie, basically.
And that kind of put me into the agnostic phase.
There is another dynamic at work here that I think you saw this also. Mog Machine, right? Did a little video on all the same stuff that we're talking about, and he built it. So he's showing us the space shuttle cockpit, and one of the things he said was the percentage of emissions lags the market cap a little bit. And
That's right.
I think it's like a 24-hour lag or something like that. So the market cap might fluctuate a lot, but this hasn't caught up yet.
It doesn't catch up. Right. Yeah. And so early on, I was doing the opposite. I was looking for people, that had a different kind of market cap to emissions ratio. Right. Because again, similar kind of logic. Right. These guys are getting a huge amount of emissions. I know it's going to change, but for now, I'll stay there. Right. Because they're getting a lion's share of that. Right. And so eventually what I think, and I have no skill like this whatsoever, I think what you have is like a seesaw mechanism where you're going to be looking at which market caps are increasing that I can tell are going to result in increased emissions tomorrow. I'll start moving my tokens over there. I'll take them away from the ones that are being artificially fed too much.
Yes.
You kind of start to see like, okay, these guys, their market cap doesn't justify. They're going to lose that emission. So I'll move it from there and give the guys going to do well tomorrow. Like I said, I think this kind of seesaw thing might work. I just don't have the chops anymore to do that kind of thing. But some smart kid's going to do it tomorrow, I'm sure.
Now if there's an EVM on the Bittensor chain, you can automate that, those kinds of moves and have a bot do them for you, right? Or something like Beefy Finance, right? But in the Bittensor universe, it sort of does all that balancing for you.
Right.
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Question for you. So the emissions that come out of in the old world, the blockchain emitted tau, and then we just got a slice of it depending on who our validator was. In this new world, is the blockchain still emitting tau? I assume it is, right? Because there's 21 million tau total. There's 8.3 in circulation right now, that have been created. Right. So it is emitting tau.
Right.
But we're not paid in tau, right? Our winnings, our emissions don't arrive.
It gets converted. Yeah, it gets converted.
It gets converted into alpha now. Yeah. So does it emit tau, and that tau is traded internally for the alpha tokens? Is that what happens?
As far as I know, yes. Although I will say that the diagrams that were in the paper that I was looking at showed you that any moment in time there's a little bit of tau, a little bit of alpha. So it's not clear necessarily. Ultimately, if there's some leftover tau that goes somewhere, like to the root, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Because the root guys want to get paid in tau, right? They're not getting paid in alpha. So they still have to pay those people something, and they're paying those people tau. So it's still emitting, and I believe the root people are getting tau. The subnet people are getting only alpha, which is converted from the tau itself, right?
So there's always buying pressure, basically, from the mining, right? Effectively. Yeah.
Right.
There's like a buyer at all times.
As far as
so that must be. Oh, that makes sense because all those like little transactions. Because if you look at the transactions, there's always like a bunch of little ones. Yes. And I'm like, who's buying like $1 worth, right? Like it's dumb.
That's right.
And that must be the chain. That must be the chain buying it. That must be what we're seeing.
That could very well be. That could very well be because it was a mystery to me as well about what was going on. And this is just all to say that again, I read that number you said about 10% of all the tau is already in the subnets.
Yeah.
But I will say it would be higher if it had been easier to do that process.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And I think that there's going to be more movement into that space as more tau becomes liquid tomorrow and the next day. Because people, the first thing that happened to me when I started getting into crypto was, and I was buying it in Coinbase. I said, I can buy some Ethereum on Coinbase. And then Coinbase would say, you want to do something with it? I'm like, yeah. Why am I got this capital doing nothing, right? What are you going to do with it? He said, well, we're going to stake it for you. I said, oh, that sounds good. And after like 3 or 4%, I said, no, wait a second. I'm reading people online from Mark Jeffrey saying, go to this place and get a lot more than that, right? So
Yeah.
it motivated me to move off of Coinbase to actually start experimenting. I did some bad experiments like you did.
We all do. We all do. You don't get away without doing something bad.
Exactly, yeah. And so you start this natural progression of comfort level in crypto, I think. And so TAO, I think, should be the same thing. People are going to buy TAO because they hear about it. And I'm sure Coinbase is going to say, we'll give you 5% of your TAO if you stake it with us, right? That's going to be the next thing, right? Because Coinbase is now in the clear about that too. The SEC had to back off of that shit,
yes,
right? And so they can do that now and not get in trouble. And so Coinbase is gonna custody all those tokens. They're gonna stake them with root and still get 15%. They're going to be arbitraging it, but eventually a couple of smart people on Coinbase are gonna say, no, wait a second, I'm reading about these subnets, right? I should park it over there maybe, right? And because the United States is a huge source of crypto liquidity. And the fact that I have to invent, I have to go get a VPN to tunnel into KuCoin to get TAO tokens cleanly it's just absurd, because Binance US won't list them either, right? So it's just a joke. So once that we can tap into the US market, I think this thing is going to do much better too. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we're in a very different environment now, and it's sort of getting, that piece of our world is getting better every day, very fast and very clearly, thankfully.
Right.
So what do you think is next year? Any predictions on where do you think the price of the coins will start being something sort of reasonable and not like startups sometime soon? I mean, my sort of guess is that the mob is not here yet. There's just the experimenters, like us bold people. That's right. Yeah. But I think over the next, and also there's two crack pipes. The first crack pipe is if you don't buy dTAO tokens, you're now making 40% just staking with root, right? So you're making mad bank just right there. It's not 60%, it's 40%. Yeah. So why would I take a risk when I can get definitely 40%, right? So that's crack pipe one. Yeah. Anti-risk crack pipe two is the Coinbase listing, which like changed the physics of TAO today, where all of a sudden being in TAO was completely attractive again in a new way. Yeah. So I think we got like a month before it sort of goes bananas, but I think it will go bananas. That's my guess. What do you think?
And they also engineered the emission schedule in a way in which it starts to trickle off, and that's just a guess that they're doing, right? So I don't think that they can predict that with any certainties. I don't know if they knew about the Coinbase press. I don't know if they knew the Coinbase listing before they announced that emission schedule, right? And so, it's imperfect, right? I mean, Bitcoin isn't perfect when you think about it. If Satoshi knew ahead of time, this is what's going to happen, I think he would have changed the emission schedule a little bit, right? Yeah. But hindsight's perfect. But here, I think they made a good guess. But I'm curious too about how that dynamic is going to affect a lot of the buying and selling within the ecosystem, because it's pretty unique. There hasn't been something like this before. And so, for me, I just feel like I feel like I'm in the gold rush. Like, you know what? They opened up the territory. Okay, I'm going out, right? I mean, I'm not Steve Jobs. I don't have infinite amount of money, but I like playing with cool projects. I'll pack up and go out there. I'll experiment. I mean, I'm a boomer, let's face it, but I'm probably one of the more, intellectually.
You're on it, dude. You're totally on top of your shit. I watch you tweet on Twitter. I take crib notes from you, man. So you're doing just fine for a boomer. So you have nothing to worry about, my friend.
I try to act younger than my years. And
don't we all?
Yeah. Sometimes when I play softball, that's a mistake.
Yes. Yeah, no, we got to be a little careful now that we're both older. So I have one last question before we go. So in looking at these subnet tokens and their sort of relationship to the actual product, there really isn't one, right? Like you don't have to use the subnet token to pay for the services. It's not like a utility token. Right. You don't have to stake the dTAO token in order to access the AI. Yeah. In many ways, it looks like these are sort of meme coins for a subnet, right? I mean, you can argue that Bitcoin's a meme coin. I mean, it's a gradation and a perception issue. But what do you think about the fact that these are sort of just meme coins Am I right, or is there more? Is there more tightly couple? Is the coupling more tight than I'm making it out to be?
Well, certainly at face value, you seem very correct, because there isn't any model yet which talks about people accessing these resources in exchange for the alpha token of that subnet, let alone what that would be, or what the there's no math, there's no valuation of any of this yet. So we are all just kind of guessing at this point about. We're all kind of hoping that it will have value as the coin of that little mini realm, right? It's because someone's going to have to use it for some purpose to get something, and so therefore, we got our fingers crossed that's going to happen. But right now, it is to some extent. Our only consolation is that we all kind of both believe that the tech is really good though still. So whether if you build it, they will come, right? So if they build it, and I think that, again, we didn't even talk about this, but the whole premise of TAO, of these decentralized, AI agents and AI systems being birthed all over the planet by the smartest people on the planet, working independently in a competitive system, I think it's just friggin' brilliant. It's just, you couldn't have asked for more, virtual definition of smart competition. Because I don't believe any centralized company, I don't care if it's Google or Microsoft, they're not going to be able to compete with these guys. There's just too many of them. They're very motivated. They're being funded now, right? And I think that in the end, you're going to see some of the best AI stuff come out of here, to the point where the big boys are going to have to come in and borrow from them, right? And so,
wow, you're that bullish on it. So you think all these like sort of frontier models that we're seeing? I mean, yesterday Grok, I forget I think it's 3. The new Grok model came out yesterday, and Elon got on X with his engineers. And those are the frontier models. Those are the very best AI models. You think at some point it's not going to be those guys with the best ones. It's going to be coming out of Bittensor.
Yes.
I certainly believe that. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that inevitably, it's kind of like it doesn't show itself at first, right? Because it is small, but it's just like this tide is coming in, and there's just no way to stop it. Eventually, the law of numbers is going to overcome it, because this competition is effectively honing all these systems faster, because there's a bigger ecosystem of people playing with them and challenging them and testing them than there is in the centralized model. So, at least in my heart, intuitively, I believe that that's the case. Now, I could be colossally wrong, but I like what I see so far. And everything I see shows these people, these little small startups, like you said, with less than $5 million market capitalization, they've got models that are performing as well as people with a lot of money. And so I feel confident that the more they get funded by the emissions of the system, I think that you're going to see a lot of smart people work here, and the smartest are going to bubble up to the top. That's really interesting. I mean, you were old enough to have seen this movie, I think, several times, right? So the first time was probably the PCs defeating the mainframes, right? Network PCs greater than, a PDP-11, right? Or a VAX. Yeah. Right. And then the second time was the online services CompuServe and AOL getting defeated by the open internet. And the third time really, I guess, probably would have been Linux. So, the operating system wars, everybody that we thought were going to win, like OS2 by IBM and, Solaris. They'll get crushed. Who was the winner? None of them. Linux, open source. So I think the pattern does seem to hold. And then I would also say DeepSeek, I think, the release of DeepSeek, where quite a bit more was done with quite a bit less. I think that changed the physics of AI very fundamentally. A Sputnik moment, but also an open source Sputnik moment, where open source benefited probably the most, I think, from that DeepSeek moment. Not a country, but open source in general. Yeah. So I think you're right. True, because it kind of shook people awake and said, you know what? Your perception or the bias towards thinking that this can only work one way, with gigantic amounts of money, gigantic amounts of computing system, is just plain wrong. And these people have shown you that. I think you're right. I think it's opened people's eyes to say, no, you can do a lot more with a leaner, meaner team that's having to cope with the tools they've got. And I think that does lead to more innovation, as opposed to kind of these, the big fat departments who are well funded. I'm never going to lose my job, right? Kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, we're up on the hour now, so I just want to first of all thank you for coming on at such short notice. And it's a pleasure to actually speak with you instead of just sort of doing the X thing with one another. So thank you once again. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.